I'm TarotOracle, and look what just arrived. It's the True Heart Intuitive Tarot Guidebook and Deck by Rachel True. Now, this Rachel True has appeared on The Craft, Half Baked, Nowhere. So she is obviously an actress and done quite a few things. So this tarot looked interesting to me because it has a nice sort of a background story behind it and whatnot. And the cards look pretty cool. Retails for $30. I believe I got it for a little less on Amazon. So let's open it up and check it out. Kind of a thin box, so I assume that we're using 2 stacks of 39 in here, plus the guidebook. It has taken a little bit of a beating, as you can see on sort of the corners here. Kind of curious as to what happened to it, but yeah, let us check it out. Okay, we got a guidebook. That is a fairly thick guidebook, I gotta say. So definitely not a short guidebook. It is black and white, and the guidebook clocks in at 207 pages. So it's nice and glossy. The pages are glossy. We'll come back and look at that. And in the meantime, we have 2 sealed stacks of 39 cards. So let's check that out. Let's open each of these, figure out how this is going to go. So it was on sale on Amazon if you got the pre-order in. This is one of the decks that I was kind of hoping to see just how good it looks. And it looks pretty decent from the previews and whatnot. And by the way, here is the back. So you can take a look at the back while I struggle with the other set of cards to try to get that open without actually damaging the cards. Obviously, we can just slice through the whole thing, but not damaging it is a whole nother project. So there you go. There are the backs. Let's see, we got the 4 of discs. I assume we're stopping here, the 3 of discs, yes. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at these and see what we got. The Fool, let's look at card quality first. They are kind of stuck together. Wow, that is really thin. That is obscenely thin. That is incredibly thin. Okay, that is incredibly thin. How much of a bend? Yeah? Okay, it's fairly thin. Let's take a look at a sort of a standard size deck, sort of with mine. And there is the Waterfall Tarot. And there is the True Heart Intuitive Tarot. If you just get a little comparison, I think mine is a little thicker. But yeah, the cards are definitely not thick. Let's take a look at the Fool. I like it. I think it's interesting. We have sort of it's interesting how it's transparent dress. We have some transparency around this particular person. That's kind of an interesting, that is so thin. That's kind of an interesting look at that for sure. But yeah, the holding everything, that's pretty standard. But I like the transparency of the dress, of the person within the dress, etc. And you do have a sort of a floating island, which is also kind of an interesting take on that particular thing as well. Now the Magician is pretty standard. We got the galaxy around the Magician. High Priestess, pretty standard again. And the Empress. Ooh, I like that. I like sort of just the relaxed color scheme within that. Within the Empress, that's pretty. The Emperor, pretty interesting. We have the eye on sort of I guess not really a globe, just sort of an orb. And on the shoulder guards are rams, kind of cool. Hierophant has a glow around the head, similar to the Hanged Man. I think that's an interesting way to look at that, definitely. And the 2 monks they have hair? Not really sure. The Lovers, there we go. I'm not really sure what that device or that thing is in between there. Looks sort of like a tree. It looks sort of like interesting. The Chariot, pretty cool. And Strength. That's interesting. Sort of riding strength. Sort of, they're my friend and we're going to be together kind of thing. I like that. I like the interpretation of that. The Hermit is interesting. I wonder what they're standing on. This reminds me of Breath of the Wild. Is a Breath of the Wild one of the shrines? You have a bunch of different things around it. Kind of interesting. And the Wheel of Fortune, the snake is dislodged. The eagle is dislodged as well. And then we have Justice. So I guess they're holding it way, way high. We have two different things within Justice, and the sword is on the bottom. Kind of cool. Now the Hanged Man, definitely a good thought project there, with the Enlightenment sort of creeping in. Death, ooh, now that is interesting. Sort of pulling aside the skin to show the rib cage, and it's within Death who is pulling aside to show their rib cage, which has a lady pulling aside to show their rib cage. So it's a bit of a vulnerability introduced into Death. I like that. Temperance, pretty standard. And the Devil. Now that is interesting how they are restrained. They are restrained. Is that a fish or a penis? I'm not really sure. Or maybe that's a finger. Sorry, that's a thumb. There we go. That's a thumb. So you have two hands, and then we are carrying a baby animal. So the Tower, pretty standard. We have the Eye of Horus. Well, not necessarily the Eye of Horus, but whatever. At the top, and then we're sort of caressing the Tower, almost trying to hold it up. That is an interesting interpretation, isn't it? We're holding it up, or at least we're trying to hold it up. I think that's cool. The Star is pretty standard. The Moon is as well pretty standard. And the Sun, very nice. No horse, no child. We just have eyes. We have an eye within the sun as well. So there you go. The Judgment. Judgment is kind of interesting there. That is interesting. And we're sort of reaching up. So the Resurrection and Judgment. The World is interesting. We have power over the world. So that's a good interpretation of that. Ace of Cups, I like it. Nice pastel-y look to it. Looks pretty cool indeed. And then we have the Two of Cups. Pretty standard. But you do have a, I'm not really sure what that is back there. It looks like maybe a temple or it's a government building or something like that. And the Three of Cups, pretty standard. Everybody sort of celebrating together. You do have multiple couples in here too. Not only do we have the Three of Cups of friends of celebration, but we have multiple couples. So it's almost like we merged the Two of Cups into the Three of Cups. I like the overall feeling of that. The Four of Cups, it looks like that we're covering, or we uncovered a flower when we lifted it up. And again, the recurring eye theme. Speaking of eyes, the Five of Cups, everybody's watching us and crying. They are all crying. How interesting is that? Six of Cups, pretty traditional, except obviously with the ships in the water. But the water sort of, still has water features within cups. Is pretty standard for most decks that aren't strict. Seven of Cups as well, pretty standard. Not really a lot to see there. Eight of Cups. I like how that the pathway that's escaping, that we're leaving, we're escaping, but we're going upwards into another planet. That is pretty cool. That is a nice interpretation of that. The Nine of Cups, I guess pretty standard. We're just sort of there with it all lined up. And the Ten of Cups is very traditional and standard. All right, let's look at the Princess. The Princess of Cups, interesting. It's sort of the Page of Cups, all by themselves, sort of represents that. I don't like the doorways. The doorways kind of restrict the whole thing, or we're sort of not exactly where we want to be sort of feel to that. The Queen, pretty interesting. I'm not a big fan of these doorways. The King as well. It just seems a little odd. It seems like, why do we have a border around this particular person when in all the other cards we don't have a border at all? The Ace of Discs, okay. Oh, there you go. A nice balancing theme. It's sort of a thicker balancing theme, or a more interesting balancing theme here. Definitely juggling, acrobatics type feel to that card. Now the 3 is, nobody's really working on anything, but they're sort of gathered together. That has more of a 3 of Cups feel than a 3 of Discs feel. And the 4, sort of traditional. We're sort of hiding out. We do have a lot of eyes. There's eyes in a lot of these cards. Speaking of which, the 5 just has an eye. I'm not really sure what's going on here. I guess the eye is watching you because you're poor, or somebody actually took the money. Sort of an interesting reinterpretation of that as well. The 6, we're giving money through a window for whatever reason. The 7, pretty traditional, except obviously with heads and whatnot. The 8, fairly traditional. And then we have the 9, very pretty card. This sort of has this pastel-y, muted color scheme. It's interesting. 10 of Discs is, I'm not sure what's going on, maybe a peacock. Is it a peacock? And then we have the page, and again with the frames. I don't really see a lot of representation or just good letting me really sort of know what the court card means. And you got a good theme of that in the Angel Wisdom Tarot. Yeah, the Angel Wisdom Tarot. They had a better reinterpretation of the courts, where the courts really had personalities and shined. Ace and 2 of Wands, not really sure. The globe is a feature in the 3 of Wands, not the 2 of Wands. The 2 of Wands is more about control, domain, and things like that, but that is sort of interesting nonetheless. The 3 has less of a pathway, but more of a windowed restriction, or thinking about something, or contemplating instead of searching. Now the 4 of Wands, that is interesting. I like that. It's a big celebration rather than just a reuniting. And they are holding hands, kind of cute. And then we have the 5, the conflict in the hair. Not really sure what's up with that. Here we have the Lord of Victory. Sort of an interesting reinterpretation of that. Nobody's really celebrating them or anything like that. 7 of Wands, we defended ourselves. We did well. But the fire in the background is interesting. It's almost like even though we defended ourselves, we lost something back there. 8 of Wands, I'm assuming it's about to hit him in the head. And the different hemispheres or whatnot, or not hemisphere, the different sections of the brain, or sort of, that's an interesting reinterpretation of that. The 9 and the 10. Not sure the 10 of Wands, sort of a weird interpretation of that. And again, we have the frames. Not a big fan. Not a big fan of that. I mean, we have Fire of Fire. That's a good representation of that. The Queen and the King, not so much. Not a big fan of the courts in this particular instance. The Ace, very pretty card. The 2, not only blindfolded, but sort of separated out. And then the 3 of Swords. That's sort of interesting. It's almost like that we are having a puppeteering aspect of this particular card. And then we have the 4 and the 5. Just sort of just parsing through it at this point. The 6, I'm not sure, the Lord of Defeat. Actually, that is almost an exact copy of my idea from like years ago. That's sort of interesting. I had an eye with a swords in it on my digital tarot, and I remember everybody hated that one. But I mean, there you go. We have another interpretation of that. That's so interesting. I'll show my old card tonight on the stream. So the 7 is okay. So we have it behind the back. We have a fox, sort of that sneaky aspect of it. But we're holding the blades and we're crossing our fingers that nobody finds out about the sneaky aspect of that. The 8 with the restrictions, and then the 9. The 9, the swords piercing into the brain. The 10, very traditional indeed. And then we have more frames. The Princess, the Knight of Swords with all the action, all the movement. The Queen of Swords with the cruelty, the meanness, and all of that, and then the King of Swords. All right, so there are the cards. Again, here we go. Here's sort of the side if you want to see that, and again with the back. All right, let's take a look at the book and see what kind of book we're looking at. It is a pretty hefty book, obviously. So the contents: introduction, getting started, digging into your deck, tarot spreads, major, minor. So the pages are glossy. I like that. So now we have tapping into your intuition. So getting focused, concentrating on it, getting centered, and then the backstory. So very little is known about the exact origin of the tarot, etc., etc. You can pause and read that. Care and feeding of your deck and choosing a tarot deck. Well, obviously I've chosen your tarot deck, so there you go. Setting up an altar, keeping a physical notebook, connecting to everything, the actor's way, and we have digging into your deck. All right, so now it talks about tarot by the numbers. We have our standard numerology aspect. We have the four suit, explains the cups, wands, and all of that. Now we put the suit and numerical value together to determine sort of where we're going to go with all of that. And then we have the court cards. So the princess carries potential for taking a partner's suit, element, etc. The queen, so you can pause and read about the court cards. And then we have the reversal handling and shuffling. I'm a magician, I'll skip this. And on to the spreads. What spreads do we got in here? We got a little bit of an introduction along with a one card daily pull guidance, a one card, one question spread, and then 3 card past, present, future, pretty standard for there, and the Celtic cross. So there is your Celtic cross spread. The 11 card mother piece spread. That's new. I've never seen a mother piece spread, so if you want to pause and read all about that particular thing, you can. And the mother piece goes into a linear line, north-south axis. It breaks that down there. We have the 10-card relationship and a true heart 5-card spread. So there we go. Pretty interesting. Now we have the sample True Heart Tarot Insight spread. Talks about the different representations of where the cards are and final thoughts. Okay, when we go into the majors, Jesus, we have an insane amount of text for each major. Let's go over the Fool. I will get it where I can read this. I'm a spine breaker. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead and read the Fool, and you get a good idea of high vibe versus low vibe. I like how they sort of separate that out in there. Then you get 2 more pages on the Fool, which is quite a lot. That is quite a tome of text indeed on the Fool. So now we go into Death. Same thing. We have a lot of information on the majors. A lot. All right, but when we get to the minors, as you can see, we only have a very short, sort of 1-page perspective on that. If you want to pause and read the Ace of Wands, 2 of Wands, then we'll go to the 9 of Wands, 10 of Wands. So I'm also curious as to how she handles the court cards. So there you go. If you want to read about the court cards, this is an extremely thorough book. I have to say, out of all the books I have, this is in the top 10 as far as like you're wanting to know some aspects of particular cards. This book gives you quite a lot of information. So pretty good book. Pretty happy with the book, definitely. And the cards, a little muted color. For my taste, sort of a little bit too pastel-y, a little bit too samey on sort of the blue and the frames and whatever when you get down to court cards and what have you. I think it looks kind of samey. The rest of the cards, I think they look pretty good. Definitely, interesting interpretations of that. And we do get sort of the same color scheme as we wander through some of the suits, for example, the wands and whatnot. So overall, I think it looks pretty cool. It is definitely an interesting deck. And let me know if you like it. I would appreciate any feedback. And pick it up right now if you need it. There are so many other decks coming out, though. I don't know. Definitely doesn't make my top 10 of the year, but it is a pretty deck, and I think the book is fantastic. Definitely going to be using this and to see how it reads. From Rachel True, this is the True Heart Intuitive Tarot. Thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.